Yeah, once you start to understand your life in a country like this and start to account for the racism and all that comes with racism, all the things that you are prevented and blocked from doing through racism, for me, that turned into a really strong sense of social justice. And so how that started for me was whilst I was still in Parson Cross, becoming a youth worker at the youth club that I used to attend. Race is just a theory. Race has no biological basis. Yeah? It has no biological basis, it has no traditional basis. Yeah? It's just a theory which has been long since discredited, but nevertheless, it still controls our lives. So when we try and have this conversation with other Africans, some will ridicule because they're embarrassed because of that dominant imagery that's put out there through the multimedia that, we came from monkeys. That was the thing that really used to kill me in school. About race and racism, it gets you first of all to think, or not to think, to know, because you really do think you know, that we're one race. There's a white race, there's a Chinese race, there's an Asian race, but actually what even is black and white? Because your hair's black, your skin's brown. You understand? And, I've never seen a white person, unless they're dead, they're actually pink.
People, you're now watching the Daily Devotion Podcast, the space where we connect and engage with creatives from various industries to share insights on their journey thus far.
And yeah, so we're not really taking much up on reading. I just did reading I had to do for school. I didn't do any reading for leisure. And so I felt that kind of like stunted my imagination and my ability to dream about, having goals for myself. And that then had an impact on the kind of jobs that I went into. Yeah, so I went into engineering. Purely and simply because my dad worked in the steelworks, as I said. And I didn't realise how good I was at that job for many, many, many years afterwards, when I was forced to analyse, do a bit of self-analysis through the career that I had in criminal justice, particularly in probation and youth justice. I didn't realise that, but thinking back, knowing what I'd done, I was probably the best operative on the floor. I was not only good producing the tools that we made, I was also good at college. So good that I remember that the college lecturer at Stannington College, as it was now, Loxley College, recommended to my manager that I get sent to university to do an engineering degree. That's how good I was. Wow. But they refused me. And I didn't think anything of it of the time. But now, that's just simply racism. Simple.
So now you've had that vocation, let's say, and you just spoke about your criminal justice career, youth justice. Why did your knowledge and understanding of self propel you into a field where you could then help other younger people, especially in this system? We're talking about systems now. Did that help you choose that career path? And were there any, issues within that, in the system? Because it's not, we know who that machine's built for, we know who it benefits.
Yeah, once you start to understand your life in a country like this and start to account for the racism and all that comes with racism, all the things that you are prevented and blocked from doing through racism, for me, that turned into a really strong sense of social justice. And so how that started for me was whilst I was still in Parson Cross, becoming a youth worker at the youth club that I used to attend. So at 21 years old, 22 maybe, I became a youth worker. Now I still, because I didn't really dream, I didn't really have that kind of imagination, I didn't really analyse myself in that way at that age. I didn't know that I had the ability to do this kind of work.
To empower.
To empower, to
be-
engage, to talk to a young person and get them to engage with me. It's a powerful thing to do, you know, as a young person or as an adult with a child. But it's my sister, Anne-Marie. I was telling her about, you know, how fed up I was in the work. This was not in the engineering, this was in, after that finish, this was in the construction work for Sheffield Wednesday Department. And she said, well, come down to the youth club. She was the youth leader at the time. She was the manager of the unit.
Shout out Auntie Anne, don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, because without her, I probably wouldn't have had a career in criminal justice. And so I went down as a volunteer, did a few months volunteering, waited for a job to come up, and I got the job. And what we used to do in those days was what we called issue-based work. So we used to teach young people around about their person through the prism of racism, gender, disability, politics, yeah, and just the conversation. Yeah, but he called it politics, but that's basically what it was. So they could start to develop their own identities in the way that makes sense to them, not what makes sense to me necessarily, because that didn't really matter. But in doing that kind of work, it became a challenge for my manager. And that's when I started to really see structural racism in its
purest form.
Absolute purest and rawest form.
Rawest form, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I worked in 2 youth clubs. I won't mention the names of the youth leaders, it doesn't really matter, but I worked at Hyde Park Youth Club when it took out the whole basement before it was redeveloped for the student games, and I worked at Earl Marshall Youth Club. And I think I did some decent work with some good young people there who went on to do some good things. But you could see that the structures, the management structures and the systems did not want me to work with them and didn't want them to succeed. They could manage them when they used to run Rampage in the place because nobody was focusing their minds.
Yeah.
When they used to run Rampage through the place and breaking things, then they could just say, right, out, you're banned. That's easy. That's what they wanted.
It's not actual intervention.
Yeah. But I turned a group of young men and young women there into some serious thinkers, you know. And when they started to think, I said, right, for the next session, I started to say, let's go to the TV room, let's have a conversation, let's see what you want to do around this place. And a bit reluctant at first to come dragging their feet. And they came in and we started, and I engaged with them on a level. Not as anybody who thought it was special, just as one person to another who wasn't far from their years. There was only about 8 or 9 years between us.
That's the thing. I'm sorry to interject. I think even within the work that I do, or the work that yourself, Paris, as you said, something very key there. 1, on their level, and 2, you're not far from their age. So you're more relatable. And I think especially now, young teachers are having a lot more responsiveness from the pupils because it's not a man who's 50-year-old with grey hair. There's a person who looks like you, who can reason with you.
Yeah. And you know, I got that from Malcolm X. Malcolm X, I read his autobiography in my early 20s. And I started to get things from there. And I remember him saying that about his art of communication, that to him, it doesn't matter whether he's speaking to children, people in the neighbourhood, or politicians. He talks to them at their level. And clearly, if you know Malcolm X, you know that he did that very, very, very well. And so I used to use some Malcolm X. I had some tapes and records that I used to play the speeches for the group. Boy, when I used to play it from, you used to send them on a level. You used to be going crazy because they didn't like to handle the information. Absolutely. Because you
radical change.
You know, if I can just switch to the just a little thing there about identity, because it's so important. Because without your identity, you're just bumming around. You know, you're just floating along and getting you just float off this direction because the wind's blowing there. You know. But I used to resonate with what Malcolm X had to say as much as I resonated with Marcus Garvey. who, you know, many of our parents and grandparents' generation were Garveyites, you know. But I also resonated just as much with Steve Biko, Bantu Steve Biko in South Africa. And I remember that Sharpsville massacre there, and seeing this young man walking down the street with his sister's dead body in his arms. Have you seen that photo? Yeah. I felt that. I didn't know what that meant politically, because I didn't understand apartheid in my teenage years. But I felt that as a person of African descent, you know. And what that started to do for me and my identity was to get me to question what I am, who I am, and where I'm from. And although I'm born in Sheffield, of parents that were born in Jamaica, I'm an African. So I'm of the African diaspora, because without Africa, we don't exist in the Caribbean. If we don't exist in the Caribbean, we can't exist here. Yeah. So I'm being quite clear on my Africanness for a long time in my life now.
It's mad because I think a lot of us growing up in the 90s were like, yo, in school, us man are Jamaican, you get me? My father born in yard, my grandma born in what am I, African, Zulus, this and that. Mockery, a lack of understanding of self had us, without even knowing, unconsciously, you know, attacking another person who is just the same as us. Yeah. Now, you speak about being born in Sheffield, parents born in Jamaica, but you're African diaspora.
Absolutely. But all of the African diaspora.
Yeah.
Because you see, where you're born is not what you are.
No, 100%.
Right? What's the breed of your dog?
XL Bully. XL Bully.
XL Bully.
Yeah.
If you buy that bully from a pig shed that's been a pig farm for hundreds of years, it's still a bully. Yeah. And that's what we are. We are. You know, we're bullies. Born in a pig shed. You know? My pig shed is Sheffield. My parents' pig shed was Jamaica. I'm not being that in a disrespectful way. I'm just talking about, you know, as a metaphor. You know? And because you see, what racism does is that it confuses to such a point, right? And confuses those who put the theory out there, because that's all it is. Race is just a theory. Race has no biological basis. Yeah? It has no biological basis, it has no traditional basis. Yeah? It's just a theory, which has been long since discredited, but nevertheless, it still controls our lives. So when we try and have this conversation with other Africans, some will ridicule because they're embarrassed because of that dominant imagery that's put out there through the multimedia that, you know, we came from monkeys. That was the thing that really used to kill me in school.
You know, more than the N-word, it was...
That's right. Monkey, you know, to be sat in a class as the only black child in a class of like 32, 33 pupils, and you do something on geography or biology or whatever, and a monkey comes into the shop, and you know everybody's looking at you, and I'm sweating like mad because I come back. I want a fighter, and wouldn't have done me any good anyway. You know, I might put somebody out, but would that have changed what I felt inside about, you know? Because and then you grow. Well, I've grown, and now I know that people like you and me were the first on this earth. We're the first on this earth to be called Homo sapien. We're the first. And from us, all other peoples have come. And once you know some simple facts like that, you'll stop talking in terms of different races. Because there is no different races.
So speaking on that now, obviously, as of late, we have these buzzwords or categories. So obviously, I'm sure in your day growing up, it was just you're black, you're white.
We were coloured. We were coloured in the 60s.
You were coloured. Whereas now you've got your Afro-Caribbean, your West Indian, your BAME. Like how much more confusion is that doing to kind of separate?
Exactly, and that's exactly what it's about. And if you know who wrote the Art of War?
Art of War, Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu. Everybody should read that book.
We read book, you know. What me read, you know. Straight, see that you can create that.
Right?
No,
Read that book because it's, you know, they go from simple to very complex combat strategies. And so if I want to, you know, you two are brethren. If I want to break you up, I come to you. I fill your head of nonsense about what he said or hasn't said, more precisely. All right? And even if you turn around and partly disbelieve me, I've sown a seed.
Yes.
All right?
And that will obviously fester and change the way that I perceive him.
Exactly. And then somebody else feels that seed. And so that's how on the plantation, we had the house Negro and the field Negro. Yeah? It's simple. Back before the plantations, we had some, you know, some of our people who were prepared to sell and some of our people who weren't. Bottom line, you know, we sold some of our own. I'm not sure they knew what they were selling them into, but, you know, and we just have to look at facts.
So basically, those strategies basically just being implemented onto a group of people.
Yeah.
And said,
over and over again. Sorry, can I just interject?
Of course.
I wanted to, like, there's been so many things I would have touched on, but even what you guys are just talking about now, like you're saying, the art of war, and that's what they've done through African countries over and over again.
Absolutely.
Divide and conquer. It's a simple equation. And if we look at recently what they've been trying to do, they've been trying to divide people. Because when you do, like, it's a simple saying, when you divide, it's easier to conquer.
Yep.
So you get what I'm saying?
It's crazy because I think we've become so polarized over stuff that are just right and wrong. I didn't even want to speak on this. George Floyd, the Euros, all of this foolishness.
Yeah.
Even amongst ourselves.
That's right.
We still can't even see that it's blatantly wrong.
Yeah, it is.
You put your
but
your
race.
knee on a man.
Yeah, but the whole thing about race and racism, it gets you first of all to think, or not to think, to know, because you really do think you know, that we're one race. There's a white race, there's a Chinese race, there's an Asian race. But actually, what even is black and white? Because your hair's black, your skin's brown. You understand? And, you know, I've never seen a white person, unless they're dead, they're actually pink.
And they're still
You
in the
understand?
spectrum of being...
But like pink and brown don't work as polar opposites. Yeah? And so they create this thing called race. And whenever we talk in terms of race, know that we're putting ourselves at the bottom, because that's where we are in the theory of race. We're at the bottom. And so one of the things that we've been doing at Sadaka is trying to develop this conversation. Well, not trying to, we're having this conversation about what and who we are. Because I don't think I'm any more black than what I am BAME, or Negro, or coloured, or whatever else they want. BAME. I mean, what is that?
What is BAME?
Yeah. And even within this that group of peoples that are under BAME, we still come at the bottom because we've still been missing out on resources and opportunities, and some other people that are under BAME were a little better off. We'll just leave it at that. And so,
try to get my channel locked up. I want to say,
no, do you know, if we don't have these conversations, we're always going to be confused. I'm not saying that I've got the word on everything. I'm saying that whilst ever we buy into this race agenda, then we can't complain too much for the ones of us who know something. We can't complain too much about taking the lash from race. And so I'm going to stop calling myself black, and you know, and I'm going to start calling myself Bantu. Bantu Steve Biko. Right? He was so powerful, they killed him in no time in a prison cell, whilst Mandela was still in prison. You know, that's how much they fear Steve Biko.
That's how,
Right? But they didn't fear him in a physical sense, they feared his mind, because he was a proper revolutionary without killing anybody. He didn't burn nobody's house down.
Do you know what's smart? Because earlier you mentioned the mind as well, and I think as black people or whatever, we downplay that. See, like,
Telling you.
Okay, with you going to the gym, build muscle, but they never want you to build your mind, because
That's right.
the mind is the key to everything. Once you have knowledge of self, you're able to elevate, you're able to transcend on, like, levels unimaginable.
Of course.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And especially like, yeah, man.
Yeah, and the powers that be know that,
Yes.
so they confuse us with race, right?
These are
And
machines to help us. With
That's
the
right, and there's
social media,
always
everything.
something or another coming out. And you know, while we're having all this nonsense in Parliament about,
Doing different-
about
Yeah.
Boris Johnson and these parties and what he
Yeah.
knew and what he didn't know, well, whether he's telling the truth or not, Boris Johnson has been called a serial liar by many
Of his
dominant
own
people in this
yeah.
country. Big other politicians, big experienced journalists. But I think what that's doing, it's taking our gaze from this new immigration and nationality policy that's coming out, that Priti Patel is putting out. Right? We're not having a conversation about that. That at any time that you or me, we could become stateless. We could become nationalityless and shipped out of the country. Nobody would know. Because you've got no, and so maybe you get a bit of money. Where are they going to ship you to? Where are they going to ship me to? Because I'm not Jamaican.
So yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's mad.
And so
Yeah,
this thing here about Boris Johnson, it's a sideshow.
All of
About
it's
some
been a
real
sideshow.
draconian policies coming into this country, the new policing bill that's coming in. Draconian measures.